Olmecs, the mystery of the culture that carved colossal heads. Picture stumbling through dense Gulf Coast jungle and finding a stone face the size of a small car staring back at you, carved by a civilization that had already vanished for over 2,000 years. Who were they, and where did they go? The Olmec civilization flourished along the southern Gulf of Mexico coast, concentrated in the modern Mexican states of Veracruz and Tabasco, a lush river-threaded lowland that was, around 1500 BC, one of the most culturally dynamic places on Earth. Their most iconic legacy is the colossal heads, monumental basalt sculptures, some standing over 3 meters tall and weighing more than 50 tons. Each face is distinct, suggesting these were portraits of specific rulers rather than generic deities. Moving 50-ton boulders, without the wheel, without draft animals, across swampy river terrain. That engineering challenge alone tells you the Olmecs commanded enormous organized labor and political authority centuries before Rome existed. The Olmec heartland held two great ceremonial centers, San Lorenzo, active by roughly 1200 BC, and La Venta, which rose to prominence around 900 BC. Both sites yielded colossal heads, elaborate earthen mounds, and buried offerings of jade. Scholars designate the Olmecs as the earliest complex civilization in Mesoamerica, a broad region stretching from central Mexico through Central America. The earthen pyramid at La Venta, built around 900 BC, predates any comparable Maya structure by centuries. But here's where the story gets genuinely difficult. Unlike the Maya, the Olmecs left no deciphered writing system. No royal genealogies, no conquest records, no mythology transcribed on stone. Their inner world is almost entirely silent. What archaeologists do recover: jade figurines, serpentine offerings, were-jaguar motifs, raises more questions than it answers. The were-jaguar, a hybrid human-feline figure, appears obsessively across Olmec art, but its precise religious meaning remains contested. The Olmec civilization began its decline after 400 BC. La Venta was abandoned. Monuments were deliberately mutilated, heads buried, altars defaced. Whether this was conquest, internal collapse, or ritual termination, no consensus exists. The Gulf Coast lowlands are geologically active. Pollen core data from the San Andres site in Tabasco, analyzed by researchers including Anthony Ranieri, shows vegetation disruption consistent with volcanic ashfall and flooding events that could have degraded agricultural land during the period of Olmec decline. But here's the counterintuitive twist. The Olmecs didn't vanish without a trace. Their artistic conventions, religious symbols, and urban planning concepts were absorbed by the civilizations that rose after them. And those civilizations carried Olmec ideas for millennia. The Olmec civilization didn't erase itself from history. Their artistic styles, religious symbols, and iconographic vocabulary persisted, absorbed, adapted, and transmitted by the cultures that rose in their wake across Mesoamerica. This is why scholars coined the term cultura madre, mother culture, for the Olmecs. It's not a metaphor. It's a structural description of how Olmec religious iconography, urban planning concepts, and artistic conventions seeded later Mesoamerican civilizations. The Maya, who built Chichen Itza and Tikal centuries after Olmec decline, inherited a visual language of power. The were-jaguar, the sky serpent, the ruler portrayed as a cosmic axis, that traces directly back to Olmec ceremonial centers. The Aztecs, whose empire dominated central Mexico by 1400 AD, venerated Olmec artifacts as sacred objects from a primordial past. They collected and reburied Olmec jade figurines in their own ritual deposits, treating Olmec relics the way medieval Europeans treated Roman coins. Now, a question you probably haven't considered. Where did the stone come from? The basalt used for the colossal heads was quarried at Cerro Sintepec in the Tuxtla Mountains, over 90 kilometers from San Lorenzo, across swamp and river. Transporting multi-ton boulders 90 kilometers through lowland swamp implies river rafting on large wooden platforms, labor coordinated across seasons, and a ruling class with the authority to mobilize thousands of workers. A state-level society, not a chiefdom. This organizational complexity, appearing in the Gulf Coast lowlands by 1200 BC, forces archaeologists to reconsider the standard model that complex civilization required highland environments, dense agriculture, and long developmental timelines. The Olmecs are shrouded in mystery precisely because the archaeological evidence is thin relative to their apparent influence. Tropical humidity destroys organic materials. River floods bury sites. Systematic excavation of the Gulf Coast lowlands began only in the 20th century. Excavations at sites like El Manatí, a sacred spring site in Veracruz, continue to yield extraordinary finds: wooden busts, rubber balls, jade axes, preserved by waterlogged anaerobic conditions that defeated the tropical decay affecting other sites. Those rubber balls at El Manatí, dating to around 1600 BC, are among the earliest evidence of the Mesoamerican ball game, a ritual sport that would persist for over 3,000 years through Maya and Aztec civilizations alike. Here's a question that generates genuine scholarly debate. Who, ethnically and linguistically, were the Olmecs? No Olmec language has been identified with certainty. Linguists Lyle Campbell and Terence Kaufman proposed in their 1976 analysis that the Olmecs likely spoke a Proto-Mixozoquian language, but the evidence remains indirect, and the attribution is disputed. Returning to the colossal heads, each one is unique. 17 have been found across the heartland. The individualized helmets and facial features strongly suggest these are portraits of specific rulers, making them among the earliest confirmed ruler portrait monuments in the Western Hemisphere. The deliberate burial and mutilation of Olmec monuments at San Lorenzo around 900 BC may represent a ritual termination, a formal ending of one political dynasty rather than conquest by outsiders. The destruction was too careful, too systematic to be simple violence. The Olmec case is a foundational reference in the field. Richard Deal's 2004 monograph, The Olmecs, America's First Civilization, remains the standard scholarly synthesis, precisely because the Olmecs demonstrate how ideas and symbols migrate across time without the physical survival of the civilization that originated them. Olmec ceremonial sites continued to be used for centuries after the civilization's political collapse, after 400 BC. Later peoples maintained, modified, and deposited offerings at these locations, treating the abandoned centers as sacred inherited ground. Consider this: when Spanish conquistadors arrived at Tenochtitlan in 1519, Aztec priests were still venerating Olmec jade figurines carved 2,000 years earlier. The Olmecs had been gone for millennia, yet their objects still commanded sacred authority. One of those figurines, a seated jade figure recovered from Offering 20 at the Templo Mayor, excavated by Leonardo Lopez Lujan's team, had been deliberately placed at the pyramid's central axis, the most ritually significant position in the entire Aztec capital. back to that stone face in the jungle. When José Melgar y Serrano documented a colossal head at Tres Zapotes in 1869, the Olmecs didn't yet have a name. The civilization had to be invented retroactively from its own silent monuments. The Olmec story is also a warning about how we construct history. Civilizations that didn't write, or whose writing we can't read, are systematically underestimated. The Olmecs built a mother culture without leaving us a single sentence to explain it. From the Gulf Coast lowlands to the Aztec capital, Olmec symbols traveled across 1,500 kilometers and 3,000 years, carried not by Olmec hands, but by every civilization that recognized in those symbols something worth keeping. The next time you see a civilization described as lost or vanished, ask the harder question: lost to whom? Because the Olmecs were never lost to the cultures they shaped, only to the written history those cultures never thought to write for them. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more.